Hello, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Alex, and we're going to be talking about his book, The Strategy Legacy: How to Future-Proof a Business and Leave Your Mark. What a wonderful title, Alex, and a wonderful book too. Alex, where can people find you?
The easiest is on my website, and I try to avoid so that people don't have to write my name because it's a bit tricky. The easiest way is go to alexthestrategist.com, all in one word.
And because you're a German in Canada, aren't you?
That is correct.
So your home now is in Vancouver.
We came over like 4.5 years ago, something like that.
Okay.
And it's always a girl or a job, and for me, it was the girl. I met her in Germany, but
Yes.
she's half Canadian, and she wanted to go home, so here we are.
I moved out of my lovely flat and I now live in this lovely house because of love. So I understand.
See.
So Alex, really love the book, and it's unique in the fact that what you're doing is that you're saying to people you need to be setting up a business to leave a mark. It's about legacy, and there's a lot of talk about legacy. It's one of the things that I actually am trying to build. So give me an idea about what the motivation and the inspiration was behind the book.
There are two different things that came together in the book for me. One was in the aftermath of moving from Europe to Canada, I felt kind of guilty that I left my clients behind in Europe.
Right.
Which was a weird feeling because while I was leaving the European clients, I moved closer to the North American clients.
Yeah.
But, there was this weird feeling being German, sitting somewhere in the center of Europe, at the heart of Europe, and then leaving the clients. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel right. And a friend of mine who I talked to about this feeling, he kind of chuckled and said, "Hey, hand them a nice present and get over it." And that idea of a present then was developed into, why don't I write down what I've been doing with them in a way that they can replicate it without me? That was the starting point, which then turned into a book. I never set out to write a book. It just kind of was a 500-page manuscript in the end. And I was like, yeah, no one's going to read 500 pages. I got to do something with that. And I got some help and an editor, and then we turned it into The Strategy Legacy. And the second part, when we talk about legacy, what I just described is kind of part of my own legacy. Can I start in a relatively young age to help people understand what I do and teach them what I've been learning? So I was very lucky, in a sense that I had the opportunity and exposure to some really bright people in my career.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot from them. And it's like when you become a parent, at one point, everything that you've learned in parenting becomes useless when the kids move out. So what do you do with all that knowledge? And I felt the same with regard to my business. And I was like, I better start teaching people what I do now, so that at some point all this knowledge can live on in other people. And if they manage to combine it what they know already, they can build on it and build amalgamations of it and do something really wonderful with it. So it also has that aspect of legacy for myself.
So you say in the book, no one cares about purpose.
Yeah, it's a pretty weird statement these days, isn't it?
I thought we only came to work now because of purpose.
Well, I think purpose is super important. And to be honest, I struggled with the concept of purpose for a very long time. I didn't know for the first 40 years of my life what my purpose was. And I always felt weird because kind of you open business books, you open LinkedIn, you open whatever you want, and people rant about purpose, and it's the next hot thing, or it has been the next hot thing for, I would say, 2 decades now. And you feel kind of weird if you don't know what your own purpose is. I don't want to say society makes you feel weird, but that's how I felt. I was like, everyone knows what their purpose is. I'm the only one who doesn't. Is something wrong with me? Kind of thing. And I realized at some point that the struggle that I had with the concept of purpose was that for me, purpose is something that can only be a starting point. But for many people, it is the end point. They think they have a purpose, and because of that, things are good. But they aren't, unless you turn your purpose into something measurable, into some impact. And unless you do something with that purpose, no one cares about your purpose. And there's so many people talking about their purpose, and then you peel back the veneer, and what you see is basically nothing that is connected to their purpose. They talk about their purpose, and then their work is something entirely different. They talk about their purpose, but when you take a look at what they do in their personal time, it's something entirely different. And this disconnect, especially on a corporate level, has led to people becoming cynical about purpose in a way, especially when companies do purpose washing. And
Yes.
you're not doing that. You're not doing that. You say one thing, but you're doing something entirely different. And that's when people start to get cynical, when they start to become skeptical about corporations, about the big ones up there and us little folks down here, like all these, well, I would say black and white terminology that then comes into play. And I don't think that does the whole concept of purpose justice. If we do the concept of purpose justice, we cannot stop at purpose. We need to ask ourselves, okay, as a company, how do we use our strategy as a vehicle to turn our purpose into impact? And that's why I say in the book, no one cares about your purpose unless you do something with it.
And so you talk about strategy and culture. So explain. We've all heard of the that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Tell us about the strategy versus culture.
So the first time I heard this term, culture is strategy for breakfast, I was like, nah, that's not right. That's just not right. It doesn't sit well with me. I have never seen it that way. I have seen aspects of it, and then I started to dig. So the first thing that I found was Peter Drucker, who's always quoted, who has said culture is strategy for breakfast, actually never said that. It's a misquote. He said something that is a bit related to it, but that has a different connotation. Nevertheless, people have adopted this sentence and this notion that culture is more potent than strategy. And that has how do I say that? For me, that sounds like an excuse. If I, as a leader, fail to implement strategy, or if I, as a leader, don't dare to go all the way with our strategy, then I just point the finger at the culture and be like, yeah, that wasn't possible. The culture just went against it, which is absolute bollocks if you think about it. If you, as a leader, believe in a strategy, if you create a strategy is the conscious choice that you make, how you invest your money, where does your business play, and what are the choices that you make to win in that marketplace. If your culture goes against that, you need to change the culture. You cannot change the strategy to make it fit to that weird, elusive concept of culture. What is culture anyway? Everyone defines it differently. So
it's like the word value. I mean, the word value is meaningless because what you think is value and what I think is value are two different things.
So what you need to do in the end, if you are serious about your strategy, you're not just designing a strategy because you want to. You're designing a strategy because you want to help your company grow, survive, and thrive, provide for the people that you lead, etc. If you believe in your strategy, that it can turn your purpose into impact, then this also means that your strategy is only as good as your ability to lead strategy, to live it. And that means you need to make sure that your culture supports it. So it is the starting point to form culture. And culture cannot be the excuse why your strategy doesn't work. That's just nonsense. It's a catch-22. In the end, it is your leadership that defines the strategy, and it's your leadership that defines the culture. And if you lead in a certain way, that shapes culture more than anything else.
And you talk in the book about the fact that if you are going to future-proof a business and leave a mark, you have to create a business or a culture which is good for people.
Yes. I call it a human-centric high-performance culture.
That's it, yes.
Human-centric because people need to be at the heart of your company. If you think it through, strategy always needs to have the customer value that you create at its core. And the people who create that customer value are the people who work in your business. So business in itself is highly human. And it still is, and it will be, even if technology advances even further than we can imagine right now. It will still be human beings who are in charge. And if I build a work culture where people can thrive, can be themselves, can bring their whole self to work and be their full selves, I can tap into their strengths, their hopes, their dreams, and can help them realize them and make a real impact also for themselves and their families. And I think that only happens if I, as a leader, if I'm clear about what the strategy is, what the culture is that I want to build, and that nothing can unite people more than having success together. You see that in sports, sports teams, when they have success together, it's just insane. But the amount of energy and dedication that needs to happen before that, that's what people often don't see. And that's what I mean with performance culture. If someone finds a place where they can bring their full selves and their performance matters, it is a place where they feel that they belong, where they have a contribution to make, and where it matters what they do. And that's the kind of culture that I would like to see in every business, where people show up to give their best and to be rewarded for it, so that both the company and the employee benefit from it.
You talk about how to design an organizational identity for peak performance in the book. So talk us through that a bit.
The concept of the 9 elements of organizational identity, which sit at the core of the book, it's a concept that holds, it's a visual that is created in 3 different rings, concentric circles, if you want. At the center of that model sits what we just talked about: values, behavioral guidelines, purpose and impact. Who am I from a DNA perspective as a company? What do we care about? How do we care for each other? How do we behave? Around that, in the second concentric circle, sits the strategic circle, where you define where your business needs to be in the near future, not too distant, maybe 2, 3, sometimes 5 years in the future, creating that, what people often call a vision, a compelling picture of the future, what you want to create as a business. And that's not a one marketing tagline slogan kind of thing. That's a very specific description of how the business will look like once you have achieved it. And from that, you derive your priorities. If that's what you want to build, what are the choices that you make to get there? That's what we call a strategy. And in there sit measurable goals. So vision, strategy, and goals, that's the inner circle. And around that sits the scaffolding, if you want, the support structure that help you bring both the inner circle and the strategic circle to life. If you want to build a certain culture, exactly, that's the picture. Yeah. If you want to bring the culture and the strategy to life that you want to build, you need that support structure around it. Otherwise, things come crashing down relatively quickly. And the support structure consists of 3 elements. Do people have the capabilities that they need to actually perform? So that's the first one. And that is leadership capabilities to lead strategy, to lead change. But it also contains, obviously, subject matter related expertise and capabilities. The second one in that outer circle is management systems. So how do we organize work, the processes, but also the organization? Do we have the right departments? Do we have the right organizational structure, so that our culture and our strategy can thrive? If things cannot get done the way you want it to get done, then you realize often there is an issue in the processes. It's not so much that people don't want to. It's often that the processes or the organization as such prevent people from doing what they are supposed to do. And the third element in that outer circle our individual targets. And that comes back to what we talked about earlier around performance culture. If you are able to link everyone's job, everyone's daily work to strategy and cultural elements, then you help people to see how they contribute. You make their work matter and you make it visible. And that gives motivation like crazy. If I know that what I do every day, the way I show up and how I contribute has a true effect on our combined success as a team, that's just amazing. It's the best feeling in the world if you know that what you contribute matters.
So the 9 elements are impact, principles, mission, vision, goals, strategy map, management systems, capabilities, and targets.
Correct. That's how I defined it.
So how about empowering organizations to implement an identity?
What about it?
How in the book you talk about that. Explain to us in more detail what you mean by that.
Well, if you think about what your job is as a leader, as someone who owns a company or leads a company, obviously you need to define first, why are you doing this? Are you doing this because you want to become rich and famous, or is there something else that drives you? And we are back to the topic of purpose. But that's your individual purpose, first of all. If you then can link your individual purpose to the purpose of your organization, those are some of the most powerful organizations that you see. And with powerful, I mean companies that have created a space in the market that is, one, unique, and on the other hand, has an almost magnetic attraction for investors, for employees, and for customers. And one of my favorite examples is Yves Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia.
Yeah.
He was a climber, kind of a bit of a misfit when it comes to the business world, but he always followed his values and his dreams. And by doing that, he created an incredible product, or incredible products. I mean, his climbing gear and outdoor apparel company has become probably one of the hallmarks of high quality, while at the same time living up to his maxim of not harming the business more than absolutely necessary, because every business needs energy, every business needs resources. So by its nature, a business is often harming the environment to some degree. But the way he set up the company and the way he built the company over time and grew the company always stayed true to, let's do as little harm as possible, and let's use the means that we gain to actually not only offset that harm, but become net positive. So do more positive than negative. And that is something that, if you take a look at Patagonia without knowing all this backstory of how the company was created and also why in the end he gave the company away. He doesn't own it anymore. He gave it to a fund who is by nature not allowed to sell the company. So his biggest fear was always that Patagonia would go public, and because of shareholder pressure, do things that weren't in line with the values of the company. So he avoided that. The way he grew the business is, if you take a look at the products and what Patagonia stands for, you walk into a Patagonia store and you see the products and like, dang, these jackets are expensive. But on the other hand, dang, these jackets last for 20 years. And if you rip them, you send them to Patagonia and they patch it for you. So they repair their apparel, they repair their gear. And the reason for that is that they are proud of it. They would patch up your jacket with a patch that doesn't fit the jacket so that it's visible that it's patched up. That's how proud they are of producing something that has lasting value. A jacket that you can wear for decades. And if it's broken, they repair it for you. And I think that is something, it's such a powerful example of what you can do as a company if you really care. If you don't care, obviously you do things differently. But if you really care, if you build a business to leave a mark and to do something meaningful, you can do it. Even with within the fashion industry, which is known for their extremely harmful environmental impact.
Alex, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book. It's fantastic, and I love the cartoons in each of in each of the chapters, and there's loads of diagrams and stuff. So it's not just a wordy book, because sometimes you think, oh, strategy, I'm not sure about. I want to read a book on that, but more cartoons and more diagrams. It's brilliant. Thank you.
I appreciate it. For me, humor is very important, and work without humor for me is dreadful. So I figured let's give the reader something to laugh about, something that depicts the oddities of the work world in the context of strategy.
So if I wanted to buy a copy of this, where would I go?
Wherever you want to buy books, it's available around the world,
yeah.
everywhere. Amazon, for example, yeah.
And where can people find you, Alex?
You find me on LinkedIn, of course. I almost live on that platform, and on my website, alexthestrategist.com, or if you dare to write my name, alexbrueckmann.com, or short, brueckmann.ca.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us, Alex. It's been excellent. Thank you so much.